Already there is talk about election. Already there is talk about the importance of voting. And of course, every May there is this opportunity to choose who will run our local council. And every few years, indeed, who will run our country. And there is always those issues that come up, and we are looking to see if this party or that party, if that candidate or that candidate has the answer. And so we are looking for the answers to housing, NHS, employment, funding for schools, environmental issues, and the list goes on and on. We are looking for the answer. But of course we know that whoever is appointed, they are not the final answer. Of course not. We recognise that for a start, resources are just too tight. We cannot expect one person to do everything, or even the whole council to do everything. Resources are limited. On top of that, the problems of life are just too complex. How can ever one person or even a whole government be the answer to our every problem? Of course not. And then there's a simple fact that none of those who we vote for will live forever. There will come a time when they'll have to be but someone else voted in. Someone else would have to stand in their place. You see, underneath those immediate issues that I've mentioned, we all know there are those deeper issues, don't we? Those things that we're wondering, why is this happening? And indeed, we're wanting the answers to those deepest needs we have, such as death. No matter how much we may run away from the subject of death, there is not one in this room who isn't affected by it. There are those chairs, those empty chairs at empty tables. There are those faded photographs of people that we have never met in our family line. And we know that death is real. And while we must continue to fight against cancer and other such diseases, is there anyone who can ultimately fight against death? Is there anyone who can actually bring life instead of death? I notice that none of the politicians are advocating that, because we know that would be ridiculous. They don't have that kind of power. So who is the answer? Who is the answer to those deepest needs of death that affects all of us? And indeed, to put it the other way round, isn't it true that at the same time we are searching for joy, lasting joy? Joy cannot be found in the things of this world. Sure, we can have joy in those things, but we all know that those things do not last forever. And there is a hunger, a desire in each of us as we search for a joy that will last for eternity. Is there anyone who can even bring such an answer as that? Is there anyone who fits that description as the answer, who can bring life over death and joy over sorrow? Is there anyone? Well, I think you might know where I'm going now, because the passage is all about showing us that Jesus is indeed the answer. And today, as we start our series, ever feel like something's missing? Well, one thing that people do feel is missing is the answer to our deepest needs. And this passage before us says in a very clear way, although not immediately obvious on the surface, that Jesus is indeed the answer. there is good news this morning. And John, who is writing this account for us, is a follower of Jesus. And indeed, he was in Jesus' inner circle. He saw things, he heard things, and he speaks of his own experience of who Jesus is and what he came to do. And he writes to show us this morning that Jesus is indeed the answer to your deepest and greatest needs. But he writes a little bit like we're on a treasure hunt. Any of you have ever done treasure hunts? You have to follow clues. And those clues together make up the whole answer and lead you to where the treasure is ultimately found. And John writes in that kind of way. He gives us lots of little breadcrumbs, little clues to lead us along the way. And one big breadcrumb, one big clue he gives us is found in verse 11. You see that there. And that verse needs to help us to understand that's the key to this passage. Verse 11, have a look at that, please. And we read here, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. And we will see, leading to that big signpost, there are lots of little breadcrumbs, lots of little things that lead us forward as we explore this passage together this morning. May each of us see that Jesus is indeed the answer. And so, first of all, therefore, let us understand that Jesus is the answer, not his mother. Jesus is the answer, not his mother. Have you ever heard someone say, it's not what you know, it's what? Who you know. And Mary is here at this wedding, and she's come across a problem. She's come across a huge problem, in fact. Now, for us in this society, it may not be an immediate apparent, but in the first century, a wedding feast would last for a whole week, 7 days. And on top of that, it was the expectation of those hosting the wedding to have enough drink. Drink was much more, it was always watered down in that day, but nevertheless, to make sure they had enough wine to last for the whole 7 days. If they ran out of wine, that was a social disaster. We might not see that in our society, but that's what it was like then, in that day. It was a huge thing. And Mary comes up and she's singing to herself, I know what I can do. And so she turns to Jesus, her son, her firstborn. And it's clear that she's wanting him to do something. Now, as the firstborn, it is most likely at this point in Jesus' life that Joseph has died, that Mary is a widower, and as the firstborn, he has stepped up into Joseph's business and has been supporting the family along with his younger brothers, younger half-brothers. And he's been ensuring that everything that Mary needs, somehow he's able to resource and get, simply because he is the firstborn. And as Jesus speaks to her, there is a very mild rebuke. Now, in our Bibles, it comes out as quite rude, doesn't it? Did you notice that? Even our footnote says, the Greek for woman does not denote any disrespect, because to call our mother woman sounds quite rude, doesn't it? But it wouldn't have been then in Jesus' day. But there was still an implied gentle rebuke as he spoke, as if he's saying to her, please, don't put me in this as if you have the answer, as if somehow your son can sort out this problem, that I'm at your beck and call. In other words, he's saying, remember who I truly am. I am much more than your son. Much more than this. This is what he goes on to say when he says that my time, my hour has not yet come. That's again code words for all the glory that Jesus is going to be revealed and revealing later on. And indeed will ultimately lead to when Jesus is nailed to a cross. That is when his glory is seen at its brightest, when he died and rose again. And Jesus is saying, it's not my time yet for my glory to be revealed. You know that, don't you, Mary? That's essentially what's going on here. And as Mary thought about this, maybe she initially thought that she was the answer to this family's problem. But with that gentle rebuke, she suddenly realizes, no, it's not on my timing, it's my son's timing. And then she says to others, do as he tells you to do. In other words, she says, I'm stepping out in faith, and I know that Jesus is going to do something amazing. She trusts Jesus because remember what Mary has already seen. When Mary was much younger, and she had already heard about who Jesus was going to be, the angels appearing. Remember, if you've ever been to here in the Christmas story, you would know about the shepherds, the angels, even the wise men coming with precious gifts fit only for a king. And all these things we read that Mary did what? She treasured them up in her heart. And Jesus is linking into that kind of stream, if you like, and saying, look who I truly am. I am more than your son. Indeed, if you would just turn over the page to the 1 John, you will see how John opens. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then this Word, who was there from time past, came into this world to rescue us. And that's who Jesus is. Indeed, at the end of John chapter 1, he says, you will see greater things than this. You will see angels coming down, descending and ascending on the Son of Man. In other words, you will see heaven breaking into this world. And just that little mild rebuke was enough to say to his dearly loved mum, trust me. And she did. Because who is the answer? Not Mary, but Jesus. Jesus is the answer. And so, we can see, secondly, not only is Jesus the answer, not his mum, but also Jesus is the answer, not the sign itself. We're told in verse 6 that there were nearby these 6 stone water jars. And these were huge. We're told that they would hold between 80 and 120 litres. If you say the average was 100, then that's 600 litres of water that they're filling up with fresh water. And so, you can imagine, they're told to draw some water out and take it to the master of the banquet. And yet you can imagine their surprise, these servants, as they knew it was water a second ago. Yet they put in the pitcher or whatever they used to ladle it out. As they draw water from it, it's not clear, but it's red. It's wine. And they take it to the master. And it turns out that it was the very best wine. Not your cheap Morrison's or whatever you might buy, or Aldi's or Lidl. I don't tend to drink wine myself at all, so please excuse me for that. But my point is, this was the very best of wine. A wine that had been maturing for years and years, perhaps centuries. And yet, what was it a second before? Just water. And it was attested by the servants of the time. All the servants knew it was water. But it was no longer water. Jesus had transformed it into wine. And so we have these words from the master of the banquet. Everyone who brings out the choice wine first. That's the usual thing people do. And then when they've had a little bit, they don't notice if the quality drops. But he says, you've saved the best till last. The very best has now come. The answer has come, if you like. And that's what we need to see from this passage. Because this is not saying that the wine is the answer. You know, when I've done a lot of street work, I've actually had people come to me who are alcoholics, and they said, well, Jesus turned the water into wine. It means I can drink a lot, doesn't it? And that's their understanding of this passage. But we've seen already that's not how you understand this passage at all. I've already said they would water it down anyway. So, strong drink would still have been watered down. No, what this passage is saying is it wants us to look not at the signpost itself, but beyond to where that signpost is pointing to. It's pointing to Jesus, to him who's revealing his glory. Have a look at verse 11 again. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of signs through which he revealed his glory. This was a sign for us to see something of Jesus' goodness and splendor, to see something of the glory that was once only for the God of the Old Testament, the Lord, Yahweh. And somehow we're now seeing that Jesus is sharing that glory. He's part of that glory. And that wine is giving us a little way in. It's as if there's a door that once it said, keep out. And now that door is left open. Indeed, it's open so we can glimpse in and see the wonder of this glory, to see what it's all about. Now, for us to understand this, we need to go back to the Old Testament. These were written hundreds of years before Jesus came, but they prepare the way for Jesus. And so, if we go back, if you want to turn to it, you can. Let's say Jeremiah 31. There are many references. I'm just going to give you two. But Jeremiah 31, they had been thrown out of the land of Egypt, of Israel, the promised land that God had given them because of their rebellion. And it was like they were raising their fist to God and saying, we know we're your people, but that gives us the right to live as we want. We don't need you, God. That's how they were living. And eventually, the consequences must fall. Some had already gone into exile, and soon the whole of Israel would be taken. But these verses, Jeremiah 31, they're pointing us forward to when there will be restoration. And so I'm going to read from verse 10. Jeremiah 31 verse 10. Hear the word of the Lord, you nations. Proclaim it in distant coastlands. He who scattered Israel will gather them and will watch over his flock like a shepherd. For the Lord will deliver Jacob and redeem them from the hand of those stronger than they. They will come out and shout for joy on the heights of Zion. They will rejoice in the bounty of the Lord. And listen to this. The grain, the new wine, the olive oil, the young of the flocks and herds, They will be like a well-watered garden, and they will sorrow no more. Then young women will dance and be glad, and old young men and old as well. I will turn their mourning into gladness. I will give them comfort and joy instead of sorrow. I will satisfy the priests with abundance, and my people will be filled with my bounty, declares the Lord. You see what it's saying there? The wine is seen as this imagery of restoration, of a great banquet where all is put right, when all the sorrows of Israel will be done and a thing of the past. And perhaps my favourite is found in Isaiah 25. This was even before exile had happened, even before Babylon was breathing down Israel's neck. And here the perspective is actually wider. Because it says here, on this mountain, the Lord Almighty, Isaiah 25, verses 6 to 8. Isaiah 25, 6 to 8. You needn't turn to it. Let me read it. On this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine. Did you see that reference there? Aged wine. The best of meats and the finest of wines. On this mountain, he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all people. What's that talking about? Read on. The sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. And you see that restoration isn't just talking about them coming back into the land for a few years. Yes, they did. But that in itself was only a signpost that God would keep his promises and send someone who would ultimately come to rescue them from all their own sin and rebellion and bring in something far better. Indeed, he wouldn't just give them Israel, he would give them the whole world, a renewed creation. And that is hinted at here in that passage in Isaiah. Because it says, death will be removed from all the nations. Death, that covers everyone, will be a thing of the past. He will remove it. Has that happened? Well, of course it hasn't yet. Not yet. But still, this parable, this miracle, is pointing us forward. It's a signpost, isn't it? Saying, look, here is the promised one. Here is the answer we need for our deepest need. Didn't we say that our deepest need is what? An answer to death and someone to bring joy? And isn't that what Jesus is indicating here through those promises? Turning the water into wine. He's saying, I am that promised king. And that kingdom has finally come. And so right now, those who put their trust in him are a part of this wonderful kingdom that is growing and growing and growing. And although you and me, we will still have to die, but that will not be the end. How do we know? Because Jesus has risen. Oh, I'm fascinated. In this passage, there are those little breadcrumbs. It was on the third day. Is that helping us to see that perhaps there's going to be another third day when Jesus will bring life, when he will defeat death? Because we know later on in John that's what happened. He died on the cross, but what happened on the third day? He rose again from the dead. Death could not hold him. And so our hope this morning is in Jesus. Not the sign. The sign just merely is a pointer towards that great banquet that one day will come, where we will share in with all the nations, all those who put their trust in Jesus. And then sorrow and will be a thing of the past. Those of you who know me and love me know that one of my favourite verses is this, quoted from Revelation, where it says that he himself will wipe away every tear from our eyes. Death, sorrow will be a thing of the past. And right now, we can rejoice in that. Right now, we can rejoice that Jesus is indeed the answer. And so this leads us on to our final truth today. Yes, you've guessed it, Jesus is still the answer. We've seen that all the way through today. Jesus is the answer, not his mother. Jesus is the answer, not the sign. But also Jesus is the answer. So what must we do? We must believe him. We must put our faith in him. Look at verse 11 again. We've already touched on Mary's faith. But look at verse 11. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed him. His disciples believed him. They put their trust in him. Now, going back to our voting illustration, when you vote, you hope, using our English word for hope, you hope that they will be able to deliver on their promises. The tick in the box is really just a wish, isn't it? We hope that they will do what they can, and we think they are probably the best suited as far as we can tell, so we vote for them. But that's not belief here. Belief isn't merely hoping for the best, just indicating our wishes that maybe Jesus is the answer. No, belief in John's Gospel is about putting your full weight on Jesus. It's about saying, I am prepared to give my life to Jesus. And I want to serve him because he is the rightful king. I want to submit to him. I want to come under his rule and authority. Indeed, I recognise that I'm a sinner, that I've been rebelling against him. I'm turning from him again and again. And Lord, I don't want to keep doing that. Lord, please forgive me. That's essentially what it is to trust him. It's coming to that point when you recognise that Jesus is indeed the one who brings complete transformation. Think of those jars of water. Just water, but they were transformed. But faith is saying, I know that Jesus doesn't just transform wine, or water into wine. He can transform me. He can change me. He can give me a new heart and a new joy. He can give me a new purpose. Indeed, he gives life, because on the third day, he rose again. And I believe that. And John has written all of this, as we saw at the beginning of our meeting today. He wrote these things so that you may what? Believe. That you may have life in his name. And so, friends, today, what about you? Do you believe him? No one else has made the claims he has. No one else has thousands of years of life pointing towards him, saying he's coming and what he's going to do. No one else has actually done what he's done, turning water into wine. And that's just the first of them. Think of the other ones, and leading up to the final sign of him, of him saying to Lazarus, "Come out of the tomb." We'll get to that in time. But he is the one. No one else has made those claims. No one else has done this. And therefore, friends, you must trust him. Don't just say, "Oh, that's a nice man, interesting man." No. You put your trust in him before it's too late. And so can I ask you to explore who Jesus really is? Ask questions. Read the whole of John. Perhaps you're new to this, of who Jesus is. Or perhaps you're brought up in a Christian family, but actually you've never really considered for yourself who Jesus is as your own person. Well, take someone and read through John's Gospel with them, and explore together the claims of Jesus. There are many in this room who'll be more than happy to read through John's Gospel with you. Why not do that? But ultimately, turn to him before it's too late. Turn from rejecting him and turn to trusting him. Live for him. It starts with a cry, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it continues, Lord, trust me. Though I'm a sinner, I'm a forgiven sinner. Keep me trusting you. But secondly, as we draw to as we close, do you believe in him? But secondly, are you increasingly growing in love for Jesus and learning to trust him more deeply? You see, you've seen again who Jesus is. You've seen that this miracle was just a glimpse, an insight into what he came to do. Is your heart being grown with love? I know that's the wrong way round to put it, but you know what I mean. Is your heart growing in love for him? Sometimes we can go just through the motions, can't we? Oh yeah, we know who Jesus is. Yeah, I know about the Bible. But if you are truly trusting Jesus, then that's not a static thing. It's not like a vote on a voting slip. You've ticked it, that's it. You've crossed that off now. You can move on to something else. No. It's this idea of I'm living for Jesus. He is my King. And so as we go through John's Gospel, just briefly, are you growing in love for him? What are you doing to fall in love with him more? That you may trust him when difficulties arise. They will arise. Of course they will. We live in a fallen, broken world where terrible things happen. But here's the thing. Jesus has led the way. And we are to follow him. And through trusting him, we can have life everlasting. Is Jesus the answer? Yes, he is. Trust him. Let us come to God in prayer.